welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alex, and today is finally the day where I get to tell you all of the 24 books that I got at Powell City of Books when I recently went to Portland, Oregon. Now, if you're wondering what is Powell's and why did you get 24 books, Powell City of Books is the largest independently owned bookstore in the entire world. I actually didn't even get to see all of the store because of how large it is versus the amount of time that I got to spend there, but I'm still incredibly happy that I got my books, most of which I was interested in getting already, but some of them were kind of surprise finds. If you're wondering why I got 24 books specifically, that is because I did an entire no-buy year, a book buying ban, if you will, and for every month that I went without buying books, I got to get 2 books at Powell's. So without further ado, here is my list. Up first is going to be the adorable and fantastic duo of Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch by Bree Paulson. Most people are familiar with these at this point, but I had never read them and actually read them when I was still on vacation. If you were curious what these are about, it stars our character Garlic, who is essentially a vegetable person who comes from a group of garden and vegetable people, and she gets to go on a couple of quests and kind of push herself as she has never been outside of the realm of the witch whose garden she comes from, and the idea of going out into the world is kind of terrifying, especially when her first adventure is to meet a vampire. Honestly, my only complaint with them was that they were not long enough. I wish that they had been about 2 to 3 times this size because I love the characters and I love the art style, but I was happy with what story I got and I would recommend these. This next book is also one that I read when I was still on vacation, and that is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, a Pulitzer Prize winner that years ago I heard a lot of people talking about and I never forgot. I knew that I needed to get this at some point, so going to Powell's was the perfect opportunity. This is the story of Elwood Curtis, who is a young black boy who really has everything going for him. He is stable, intelligent, he's in high school but is so smart that he's been recommended to take college courses, and so he has his life lined up ahead of him and everything seems to be going according to plan until something happens where he gets wrongfully accused of a crime and thrown into a reformatory school for young boys. This is really a story about the reformatory schools. It's meant to be an educational experience for the readers as we watch our characters navigate this disgusting, negligent, violent, unkept, sexually abusive place. The writing of this is beautiful and captivating, and I honestly did not want to put it down once I started reading it. It's that good. And I did end up giving it 5 stars, and I have full intention to read his other best-selling novel, The Underground Railroad. So I look forward to getting that at some point in the future. Up next is a book I've heard so much about, which is The Song of Achilles, which is the winner of the Orange Prize for Fiction. Everybody was talking about this book the year that it came out, and honestly a little while after, and I am extremely tardy to the party and know that I now need to read it. This is of course a retelling of the story of Achilles and Patroclus. I honestly do not know any more about it than that. I'm not super familiar with Greek legends, and I don't typically like retellings of very famous stories, so I wasn't certain that I would even like this, but I decided to give it a try, and if I end up really liking this, then I may end up picking up another book like Circe, so we'll see how it goes. Up next is a subscriber recommendation, An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. I originally had this on a list video of recommendations from my subscribers, and it was meant to lead into my Christmas wish list that I gave to my family, and this was one of the books that I did not receive for Christmas, so it's kind of been in the back of my mind. I have read a Rivers Solomon novel before and admittedly was not the biggest fan of it, but this is going to be me giving this author a second chance because this might just be the book for me. This is the story of Astor, who lives in the bottom slum decks of a generation ship called the HSS Matilda, and it's basically organized like the Antebellum South. And that's pretty much what I know about this book. That was enough for me to want to pick it up because of this really interesting blend of future and past. So you have this very far future idea of a generation ship while people are also stuck with slums and the antebellum South and segregation, which is not something I think most people who read science fiction would think of for a generation ship. It's kind of this idea that you're all living as a big family, everybody's in harmony, you all have to work together. So separation on a ship like that, I'm curious to see how River Solomon handles this, and I'm looking forward to reading it. Up next is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. This is the story of the Montoyas who are invited to the funeral of Orquídea Divina after she has passed away, and when they show up, they are expecting to learn the secrets that their matriarch has held for all of these years, and instead end up receiving special gifts. 7 years later, 3 of the members, Marimar, Ray, and Rhiannon, end up inheriting their special powers, which grant them unknown blessings. But soon, a hidden figure starts tearing through the family, hoping to kill Orquídea's line. My understanding is that this alternates between Orquídea's past and the present of her family members that are running from this mysterious figure. I love books that are told between past and present and also have a little bit of magic thrown in there. I've heard amazing things about this story, and it was not one of the ones I was looking for, but it is one that I ended up getting, and I'm very excited to have found it. Yet another book I was not expecting to get was The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, and you can see the amazing purple edge. This is the only book I got that had any sort of spray painted edge, and I've never had one with purple, and I love it. This was a novel that was actually a staff recommendation, so I took that quite seriously, and apparently it is the story of an incredibly antisocial librarian who originally was very content to catalog and work in the largest library in this magical world, but soon somebody destroys it and she is forced to flee to her home island. While on the island, she's trying to settle in and just have a quiet life away from people, but she keeps being bothered by this pesky and incredibly handsome neighbor who's just trying to make sure she's okay and wants to help her fix up her house. There's some type of bakery, and our main character starts providing jam. This is essentially a jam-filled romance, if that sounds interesting to you. It sounded interesting to me. I think this is going to be an incredibly cute book. I don't typically read romances, but this sounded more like a comfort story, like something light and fluffy and fun, so I decided to pick it up anyway. Another unexpected find that was a recent book to come out is The Ministry of Time by Kayleigh Bradley. I was interested in this book for a couple of reasons. One is that it's science fiction that deals with an interesting form of time travel, and 2, because it's technically a romance between a woman who lives in the present and who works for the Ministry of Time and a man who is from the past. One of the reasons I find this book such an interesting concept is because most of the time with time travel novels, we're trying either not to alter the past or to alter it in a way that nobody would notice in order to get a better future. In this case, we are actually actively pulling people out of the past into the future to see how they would respond to it, whether they can even live in the present. And I myself have wondered before, if I were to take somebody like George Washington and I were to put him in the year 2024, how would he respond to that and how would he adapt? The sun went away, but for this next one I have The Monstrous Trades, number 6, number 7, and number 8 for the comics. These are some of the most beautiful comics that I have ever read. They're definitely adult and only for mature audiences. Wouldn't recommend your children read them unless your children are like in their 20s, but I love them and I'm really excited to see where the story goes, and the 9th one is actually slated to come out quite soon, so I may end up pre-ordering that as well. Next, I had to, of course, continue on my Discworld Terry Pratchett train, and I was not able to find all of his books that I was looking for, but I did find 2 of the 3 that I needed. The next one was Eric, and this is a special edition of Eric. I actually didn't realize that this one was such a short novel. I thought that all the Discworld novels were the same size. They are in fact not. So when I saw their edition was not of the same style that I've already been collecting for the Discworld novels, I was like, well, if I'm going to get one, I might as well get one that's a very interesting edition. So I ended up getting one that is the illustrated version of Eric. And what is so cool about these illustrations is that they are from the original artwork that was printed when the books first came out. What's really cool about this edition also is the fact that it was originally printed in the UK, so somebody took the time to actually buy this and either ship it over or bring it over with them before eventually selling it to Powell's, and you can tell by the fact that there actually is the pound marking on the back. And then because I'm reading Discworld in chronological order, next up is going to have to be Moving Pictures, which is exciting because I'm going to be introduced to a cast that I have never met before. And the concept for this book is that a wizard has decided to become an actor and try to make money on the big screen, and I guess some sort of magic ends up getting involved because magic always gets involved, and it ends up making some of those stories come to life. And I guess they have to do something to save the world because they usually end up having to save the world. This next one is another subscriber recommendation, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Now, I am excited to read this in particular because even though I own the book The Martian, I have yet to get to it, but a lot of people say that they actually enjoy Project Hail Mary more than that other book, even though the other one is the one that got turned into a movie. I am a little skeptical of this book because it has one of my least favorite tropes, but everybody claims that it's done in a really interesting and great way, so I'm going to give the book the benefit of the doubt, and that trope, of course, is memory loss. So this is the story of Ryland, who is the last surviving crew member who essentially has an impossible mission to save the world. He has to complete some sort of mission all alone while he doesn't necessarily remember what he's supposed to be doing or why he's there, but his memories slowly kind of start coming back to him, and I imagine it's going to be a lot of intense and anxiety-inducing fanfare, which I'm looking forward to. Up next is another very popular novel that admittedly I have not heard a lot of people on BookTube talking about yet, but I have seen it all over the internet, and that is Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. I'm pretty sure that this is meant to be kind of a fictionalized and exaggerated take on the American prison system and the privatization of prison systems and what they're able to get away with. This book speaks to me because I think that the prison system is inherently corrupt and absolutely should be reformed. Essentially, what's going on in this book is there are prisoners who are competing for their freedom. They have to compete in a style of gladiatorial combat, and basically the victor, the one who kills everybody else and makes it out on top at the end, gets to be set free. I think that this is probably going to be a pretty emotional book because, of course, you're putting a bunch of people who are already the lowest members of society in a position where they have to fight to the death in order to hope to get freedom at the other side. No idea what to expect, but I've heard great things. I mean, it's a New York Times book review, 10 books of 2023, and a National Book Award finalist, so I think I have a pretty good chance that this is going to be something that I enjoy. Up next is going to be an older but also incredibly popular book, Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alaire Sands. This is the story of Dante and Ari, who are two boys just at polar opposites of the spectrum in terms of personality and the way that they communicate and the way that their lives are, even the way that they look is distinctly different, but they end up forging a special bond with one another, and it is an LGBTQ story in case you were looking for more of those to add to your reading list as well. I've only heard amazing things about this book, so I am incredibly hopeful. Up next is going to be one that my friend Heidi is extremely excited about, and that is The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. Heidi is one of my subscribers who comes to all of my live shows that I do on Friday, and I remember when she was reading this and talking about how this was like one of her new favorite books, and she loves Christopher Buehlman. I typically don't read stories that are about thieves or thieves guilds or assassins and assassins guilds unless of course it's in the Discworld novels. But this is the story of Kinch, who is a thief for the Thieves Guild, and he owes them a great debt because they trained him to be a thief, and he is now waiting on the side of the road to rob the next passerby. I don't know if it's some sort of caravan or he's just trying to collect enough money to pay his debt, but unfortunately for him, the person that comes along is the absolute last person that he should try to rob. So Kinch and this mysterious honor-bound knight end up going off on a journey, and that is all that I know about the book. I'm really hoping for witty dialogue. Up next is a book I've been wanting to get for a while but have no idea how this is going to go, and that is Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brom. This is the story of Abatha, who is a widowed woman living in a Puritan town who has basically nobody to turn to for help except for this pagan, I don't know if he's a deity or some type of spirit, but he's living in the woods, and when she goes to him for help, it ends up starting this kind of war between the pagans and the Puritans in the town. I don't know any more about it than that, but there are some really cool illustrations in the middle. There are multiple of these illustrations, all just so well thought out and detailed, and I love them. And I'm so excited to read this, and this was a book that Kat read and thought was interesting, and I finally decided to pick it up as well because I also saw that Brom had written some other things that were all equally as big and I think had illustrations there too. If I end up really liking this, I'm probably gonna have to pick up the next thing that he wrote. I love stories about witches and kind of like weird dark magic like this. So it sounds really cool. Up next is my Stephen King novel that I purchased, which is Doom McKee, which admittedly before I started doing my live shows was a novel that I had never heard of before, and many people consider to be a very underrated Stephen King book. This one is the 15th anniversary edition, so it is not a new book by any stretch of the imagination. This is the story of Edgar, who is a man who gets into a construction site accident, ends up losing his arm, loses his marriage, I think has something happen to his brain, and he ends up going off alone, living in Florida in this like small community called the Doom McKee, and he ends up befriending an elderly woman and develops some sort of special ability that of course is going to cause a bunch of negative and horrible things to happen because it's a Stephen King novel. I've heard that this is genuinely terrifying. Whether I'm going to find it to be scary, that's a totally different matter, but whenever somebody says that, hey, this is an underrated book and it's actually really scary, that makes me want to read it even more. So I was happy that I was able to find this. Then I have The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, which is the only nonfiction book that I purchased on my trip. I don't really have much that I can say about this because it's a memoir and one that I've heard that is incredibly sad about Jeanette Walls's growing up and her incredibly dysfunctional parents and the fact that her and all of her siblings basically had to take care of one another because of the way that her parents raised her. I have no idea what to expect. I'm hoping that it'll be amazing. It's probably going to make me really depressed though. The next one is actually one of Kat and I's book club picks. So if you weren't aware, Kat and I started a book club called the Book Wyrm Club, the worm as in dragon, W-Y-R-M, and we are incredibly excited about it. We're actually having our first meeting for our club this month on the 29th for Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is the second book that we are going to be reading when we come together in October. And so I'm very excited for this. I was happy that I was able to find a copy because I didn't previously own one and I had no idea if I was going to be able to get it from the library. So thank goodness for my trip to Powell's. Up next is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, which was also a Lambda Literary Award finalist. I love the idea of this story because it sounds to me like there might be mermaids in it. I cannot confirm or deny, but it sounds really interesting, and it is about a lesbian couple, one of whom is a marine biologist, and her name is Lee. Lee went on a routine expedition in her submarine, which ended up sinking to the seafloor, and when she returned home, she hasn't quite been the same, and I guess we get to kind of uncover why that is. This next book is one that admittedly I had never heard of before until I went to Powell's, and the only reason that I know about it now was because it was on a special wall display for their summer reading program. And I think it's because this book technically takes place in Oregon, so they like to pick books that were set in the same state. But this is called The Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt, and this is the story of Eli and Charlie's sisters, the Sisters Brothers. Get it? Of the two brothers, Eli does not share Charlie's bloodlust and desire to kill people. So while they are on the hunt for this elusive mark, Eli starts questioning why he's in this line of work and who exactly it is that he's doing it for. And I also feel it's important for me to mention that it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. And last but hopefully not least is going to be The Terror by Dan Simmons, which was turned into an AMC original series. I have not seen it, so this book is a complete mystery to me. All I know about this book is that it's about a group of men who were on the 1845 Franklin expedition in the Arctic Circle, where their ship ends up getting stuck and they are left with minimal rations in the freezing cold with nothing but themselves and their ship in order to survive until things start to thaw out again. Part of me really wants to read this in the winter, but I'm also afraid if I read it in the winter, it's going to make me feel even more cold. So I have no idea, but if you think that I should read this in the winter, be sure to let me know. I was trying to figure out whether this or Doom McKee were larger, but it turns out that oddly enough, they're actually the exact same number of pages, which is weird, and I didn't realize that until just now. So apparently I bought two almost mammoth books. And that's it. I really hope that you enjoyed this video for my much anticipated 24 books that I bought at Powell's City of Books. If you would like to subscribe to my channel and haven't already, I would really appreciate it. And also please leave me a comment down below to let me know if you have read any of these books or are interested in reading any of these stories. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, that you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.